The message came at 3:17 UTC, buried beneath 30 layers of encrypted dead. Channels tagged Omega Red, verify. Twice, by the time command cracked it. Open, it was already too late, human. Envoy terminated, no trial, no. Witnesses, council unanimous, Earth no. Longer recognized as a sovereign species. A silence washed over the dark ops war. Room deep beneath Geneva archaeology, no. One spoke. The admiral stared at the line of text. His jaw stiff, hands locked behind his back. The council had done it. They'd actually done it. They'd executed Aaron Halden, Earth's last diplomat to the Galactic Core. He wasn't just a representative. He was humanity's final bridge, the voice of reason in a room that saw Earth as a backwater species. He spoke 17. Alien tongues had diffused wars before they began and had given up everything. His family, his name, his freedom to make sure humanity had a seat at the table, and they killed him quietly like he was nothing. Bring up Endgame protocol, the admiral said. Sir, his lieutenant blinked as if hoping he misheard. I said activate Endgame, the admiral repeated, his voice like broken stone. Level Z confirmation, get me Overwatch. Spy command and Black Dagger, we go. Full spectrum, the room cracked into motion. Officers moved like ghosts, each one knowing what the order meant. Endgame wasn't a bluff, it wasn't a contingency. It was the last card humanity ever wanted to play. 20 hours earlier, the Envoy Aaron had been dragged from the diamond-lit halls of the core citadel, wrists chained in grabenders, no warning, no appeal. The entire council chamber had watched, cold and indifferent, as their guards slammed him to the floor before the speaker of stars. You are accused of technological subterfuge, illegal AI advancement, and the theft of forbidden stellar drives from council storage, the speaker had declared. Aaron had laughed. Not bitterly, not sarcastically, just tired. Is this how it ends after everything? We've bled to become part of this twisted club. You admit guilt. No, I admit being stupid enough to think you'd ever see us as equals. The council didn't debate. They never did when the victim was human. Earth had no patron species, no protectorates, no home world alliances. They were alone by design. The execution was streamed across their sectors. One final message: humanity is finished. Stay in your system. Speak when spoken to, crawl when you're told. They thought Earth would stay silent. They were wrong. Geneva archaeology became a war cathedral. Overnight, orbitals hummed as long dormant kill satellites came online. The Martian AI sent a pulse through the inner solar system, and dormant sleeper fleets flickered to life from the moons of Jupiter to the ice deserts of Neptune. Black Dagger, Earth's most secretive military division, broke the seals on vaults no one had touched in 50 years. And beneath the Pacific, the Leviathan protocol spun up, a planet-killer engine powered by outlawed physics Earth had never dared admit they built. Get me Harland Vex, the admiral barked. You mean the exiled commander? The aide replied. I mean the man who wrote the Endgame doctrine. Bring him in alive, somewhere in a prison beneath Lunar Sector 9. Vex, a man humanity swore never to use again, opened his eyes as a red light blinked on the inside of his cell door. No guards, no words, just a single message printed on his wall: they killed him. You're up. Vex wasn't a man, he was a Weapon a scarred relic of the last Titan wars. He had once commanded fleets that erased moons like fireflies under a boot. Then they locked him away for going too far. Now they needed him to go even farther. As Vex walked through the corridor lined with steel guards, he didn't ask questions he didn't need to. Aaron Halden, he asked. The Admiral nodded. Once they made him kneel before they killed him, he added. Vex nodded slowly. Then we won't ask them to kneel. What's your move? The Admiral asked. Vex turned to the tactical display and grinned, the kind of smile that had once terrified warlords. We burned their stars. The silence in the command war room was the kind that crawled under your skin. The Admiral stood at the edge of the long steel table, hands pressed down hard enough that the bones in his knuckles turned white. The lights dimmed across the curved digital walls, each one flickering through tactical maps of known enemy systems, ship registries, hyperlane surveillance nodes, and red-tagged war assets. Every image felt like a trigger pulled. Harland. Vex stood beside him, wearing nothing but a high-collared field jacket and prison fatigues. The man had no rank anymore. He'd been stripped of honors, disavowed by Earth Gov after the Titan siege, but here he was, summoned from the dark for humanity's last war. No one greeted him, no handshakes, just nods. Silent fear, the kind only one man could inspire. You don't ask for me unless you've already decided to kill gods, Vex said, scanning the intel streaming across the wall. You're the only one who ever succeeded, the Admiral replied flatly. That was a long time ago, still counts. Vex tapped the wall interface, dragging 3 galactic sectors into his working display. He zoomed in past the diplomatic territories and safe trade zones into the outer rings of the Archani Dominion, one of the Galactic Council's oldest members. It was the Archani who had introduced the Council's punishment doctrine: swift, public, final, no appeal, no evidence required. They'll expect a show of force, the Admiral said, voice low. Then we give them a funeral, Vex replied. Not a battle, not a warning, a massacre. No one interrupted him. The man was building a war from scratch. Vex's eyes landed on a small moon near the border of arcane-controlled space, Kala Vexus, a refinery hub for antimatter conversion and council-grade star drives. He pointed. That's where we begin. They won't guard it heavy. It's too deep in their space too, but if we take it out, we cut off their expansion routes across 5 sectors. That'll trigger a council-wide kill order, the Admiral said. They already gave it. This is just the answer. The preparation was surgical. Project Silent Grief, a stealth armada, never officially acknowledged, was pulled from cryovaults deep beneath the Martian crust. Ghost ships with no registry, no call signs, no laws. Pilots volunteered without being asked. Some were veterans of the outer belt skirmishes, others were street-born savages from the null colonies, raised without light or rules. They all had one thing in common: they hated the Council. The fleet was armed not with conventional nukes or ion warheads, but with dark tech payloads reverse engineered from ancient preconsole artifacts, weapons outlawed in every known system, weapons that didn't just destroy matter, they rewrote it. You sure this is the right path? The Admiral asked Vex as the final strike formation aligned in Earth's orbital shadows. Vex stared out at the black silent ships. They executed our envoy, declared us subsentient, and told the galaxy we don't get a voice. I'm not here to fight. Fair, I'm here to finish the sentence. 2 days later, Calypsis exploded without warning, no broadcast, no declaration. No heroic speech, just a silent flash, followed by a gravity implosion that folded the moon in on itself and left a crater the size of a small planet. The council reeled. The Archani sent out scouts. None returned. The destruction didn't just hit a tactical target, it struck the council's myth of invincibility. No one had ever dared strike that deep. No one had slipped past their sensors. Earth had cleaned fast, brutal, and then came the message, not sent through diplomatic channels, not through interspecies forums, no encryption, just a public, untraceable broadcast. Aaron Halden died. With dignity, you will not, we are not your subjects, we are your end. The voice was unmistakable. Vex council meetings turned into war tribunals. The high speaker of the Trenerai species, gelatinous and arrogant, called Earth's attack terrorism. The Archani, enraged, demanded total retaliation. But the Draquil, a calculating insectoid collective, hesitated. They struck us in our core. Our fleets were absent. That concerns us more than their weapons. The Corin triumvirate, the only species known to have warred with humans centuries ago, said nothing. Their silence was louder than outrage. Earth was always dangerous, one of the council members hissed. But this is what happens when you push a species that never truly accepted the leash. The council voted to initiate Extermination Protocol Alpha 7, the official label for planetary scale cleansing. It had only ever been authorized once, and the species it was used on no longer existed. But they humans were ready. On Earth, Vex stood in front of a room full of leaders who had once signed his exile papers. Now they hung on his every word. We'll never outnumber them, he said. Never outrun them, never out-legislate them, but we're not here to argue for survival. He walked past the hologram of Earth, zooming in on old spaceports, then out to orbital platforms rigged with zero mass accelerators, technology Earth was never supposed to have. We don't need peace, we need memory. Memory, one of the tech officers asked. We turn every battle into a message, every victory into a scar, make them regret they ever made us speak in their tongue. The room went quiet, no one applauded. They just got to work. The Archani strike force arrived 3 days later. 1,000 ships, war-forged cruisers, planetary disassemblers, full cleansing class. They jumped into Sol, expecting resistance. Instead, they found silence. No ships, no defense lines, just Earth, blue and still. They hesitated. That's when the Saturnian phantom mines activated, experimental kinetic weapons placed in Saturn's rings that launched shard explosives at light speed, invisible to tracking systems. Over 400 Archani vessels were destroyed in under 3 minutes. The rest scattered as they tried to retreat. A rogue moon, Janus 13, split open, revealing itself as a planetary rail cannon. It fired once, vaporizing the arcane capital ship. By the time they scrambled to recoordinate, Earth's stealth fleet appeared and tore them apart. Vex didn't fight like a general, he fought like a man writing an obituary. When the battle was over, the humans didn't celebrate. There was no music, no headlines, just silence. A broadcast went out. You erased our name from your records. Now we erase you from memory. somewhere far beyond Council territory. In the shadow of a dead star, the last of the exiled human AIs came online. Project Echor, a rogue intelligence that had escaped shutdown decades ago, was fed data from the Arcani massacre. It watched, calculated, then spoke. Humanity has activated the Endgame tree. Probable outcome: total deconstruction of Council hierarchy. Probability of survival: irrelevant. It turned its gaze towards the Council's central data spine, an ancient construct buried in the ice layers of Zenthar Prime. Echor began building a worm, one that would eat the Council from the inside. Back in Earth's orbit, Vex stood at the bridge of the command carrier Revenant. The crew around him didn't smile. They didn't joke. They were soldiers of extinction. This isn't revenge, Vex said, watching as Earth turned slowly below. This is correction. We gave them diplomacy. They gave us a grave. He looked at the stars, each one a system that once laughed at humanity, once pied them, once feared nothing. They think this is our final act, he said, but we're just getting started. The Council wasn't crumbling, it was unraveling. Reports bled in from every sector: communication blackouts, star lanes jammed by magnetic interference, trade ships blinking off the grid, some swallowed whole by silence, others found gutted, holes scrolled with ancient Terran sigils burned into the metal. They didn't know what was worse, the destruction or the precision. Humanity wasn't lashing out. This wasn't desperation. It was surgical, calculated, measured like a debt being paid in full, and it was personal. Because Earth had watched the galaxy treat its envoy like a moot in a noble court, heard the silence when his body was broadcast lifeless and broken in the Council chambers. They hadn't just killed Aaron Holden, they had humiliated him, and Harland. Vex understood something the Council never did: shame is the perfect accelerant for war. Inside the nerve core of the Revenant, Earth's flagship, Vex stood before a circular table wrapped in holograms. His officers waited, some still bruised from the Archani slaughter. On screen 3, more targets blinked in red. Targets of opportunity? Asked Commander Ruth, second in command, voice gruff and tired. No, Vex replied. Targets of memory. He pointed to the first Raxus Keep Council listening post. It's where they tapped into our Martian tech relays and pretended it was legal surveillance. The second Caris Prime. They took children from there, hundreds. Claimed they were candidates for galactic integration. They vanished. Third, the Trinary halls, where they paraded Aaron's corpse like a trophy. A cold silence swept the table. This isn't about making them afraid, Vex said. It's about making them remember why they should have been. The attack on Thorax's Keep came first. It wasn't a battle. It was a message delivered with a scalpel. Earth stealth fleet disabled the outer comms grid without firing a shot. Inside the station, alarms were tripped and dismissed. For 8 full minutes, the base operated under the illusion it was secure. Then the lights went out. They didn't even hear the infiltrators until it was too late. Earth's Black Dagger unit, specially modified with carbon-faced exo suits, moved through the corridors like phantom. No bullets, no blasters, just blades, strangulation cords, and electrical bursts to the spine. The commander of Thorax's Keep was found duct taped to the comms relay, his fingers fused into the emergency distress beacon with a chemical sear. Carved into his chest were the words, "We heard you listening, back in." Council space panic took hold. Arcani were humiliated. The Trenor screamed for planetary bombardments. The Threxan Assembly wanted to send a kill cloud toward Earth's sun. But the Drakwil, logical and detached, were watching closely. They don't want territory, their queen spoke to the council. They want erosion. They want your systems to rot from within, and it's working. No, the arcane delegate hissed, they want revenge. Revenge is reactive. This is systematic. Collapse we may be dealing with something worse than a rebellion. The council silenced her. Big mistake. Caris. The council thought the planet was protected by the Bulwark Array, a multi-tiered planetary shield system, powered by a Dyson shard orbiting its star. What they didn't know was that Earth's exiled AI, Echo, had been feeding on the council's own data grid for years, learning, adapting, and rewriting itself in secret. In less than 12 seconds, it injected a falsified maintenance update into the Bulwark's relay system. The shield dropped. Caris Prime was naked. Revenant moved into position. But Vex didn't give the order to destroy. No, this strike was different. Instead of bombs, they launched memory nodes, orbital delivery drones, containing millions of files, audio clips, photos, personal documents, and video logs of the missing children. Some were experiments, some had been sold, some had died in silence on cold slabs. The evidence played on every network in Caris Prime, hijacking comms, media, and public terminals, and at the end of every broadcast came Aaron Holden's voice. You called it diplomacy. You called it integration. We call it theft. We remember. The council tried to jam the signal. Too late. The people saw everything. Within days, Chara's own citizens rioted, storming the local council embassy. By weeks' end, the Caris protection fleet had defected. Vex watched the reports from the Revenant's observation deck. Earth was no longer shouting into the void. Now, others were whispering back. Rebellion didn't need force, it needed a match. And Earth had become one hell of a fire. Commander Ruthven entered silently. Behind him, we've started something we can't pull back from. Vex nodded. We were never meant to. Ruthven stepped forward, glancing at the stars. What about the trinary halls? Vex's expression darkened. That one, he said slowly, we burn. The trinary halls were sacred, built over the decayed husk of an ancient star. 3 gravity-welded towers drifted in triorbit, housing the council's historic chamber, where every major vote, decree, and execution was recorded. They held Aaron Halden's trial. There, no lawyer, no witnesses, no time to speak, just silence, judgment, and death. Vex made sure they would remember. Revenant entered the system with no stealth protocols, no jamming, no masks, just full force fury. Council fleets mobilized instantly. 7 armadas worth of firepower and ancient war machines. This was the heart of their pride, and Earth came straight for it. Battle raged for hours. Earth's fleet should have been wiped out, but it wasn't just ships Vex had brought. It was collapse logic. Echo had seeded their ship systems with code rot. Mid-battle, dozens of enemy cruisers lost targeting capability. Others turned on their own. Entire units misfired into friendly formations. Chaos. Beautiful, brutal chaos. And then Vex gave the order. Revenant powered up its main cannon, a gravitational Weapon outlawed by 3 galaxies. It fired once. The middle tower of the trinary halls folded inward like wet paper, collapsing into the star's corona. A gravitational shock wave ripped the remaining towers apart. Live council broadcast was still rolling. Galactic citizens everywhere watched their ancient rulers burn in real time. Later, Vex sat alone in the command room. He didn't smile, he didn't speak, he watched the ashes. Sir Ruthin said, entering again, "We've just received something unexpected." What a transmission. Not council, not one of ours either. It's from the Corin. Vex looked up. The Corinth had fought humanity 300 years ago. The war ended in a draw soaked with blood, neither side ever fully recovering. Since then, they'd stayed silent. The message blinked on screen, a single phrase: "We remember the fire. We are listening." The council met again in emergency session, except this time not everyone showed up. The Drakwell seat sat empty. The Corin representative absent, only the Arcane Trenerai and a few desperate loyalist species remained. They raged, they screamed. They called Earth a cancer, but the galaxy had seen too much. The rot was exposed. Their so-called moral high ground was gone, and out there in the dark, Vex was still moving, and he wasn't interested in negotiations. On the edge of Council territory, a new space station was being constructed, not for war, not for trade. It was a monument, a massive black obelisk, covered in names, the names of every human victim the Council had tried to erase. At its center, engraved in ancient Earth steel, were Aaron Halden's final recorded words: "If they silence us, let our silence shake the stars." Earth wasn't fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for legacy. And the galaxy was beginning to understand the truth. When humanity has nothing left to lose, they don't ask for peace. They write history with fire. The Council no longer ruled the galaxy. They just happened to sit in the center of it while the edges caught fire. After the fall of the trinary halls, the illusion shattered. Every system that had once bent the knee to the Council out of fear began asking the same question in hushed tones across encrypted channels: "Can Earth win this?" It wasn't admiration, not yet. It was self-preservation, the kind that turns allies into ghosts and enemies into sudden neutrals. And somewhere in the shadows of the collapsing order, the last voices of the old regime plotted something desperate. The Archani home world, once a beacon of strength, was locked down under a martial emergency. State civil unrest was growing. News had leaked, deliberately or not, that the missing children from Charney's prime hadn't been an isolated event. Families had been taken from border systems. Shipments labeled as cultural exchange had included entire colonies. Humanity's war wasn't just strategic, it was revealing. And the galaxy didn't like what it saw. In a dark sublevel beneath the Archani Citadel, a group of remaining loyalist officials sat inside what they called the final table. There was no more protocol, no titles, just fear. "He's not a general," hissed the Trenerai Envoy, its multi-eyed face twitching. "He's a disease." "He's a mirror," said one of the few still thinking delegates, a weathered Irani named Brilin Voss. "And he's showing us exactly what we've become. That human Vex, he has no chain of command, no council, no advisory, no balancing force. He's one man and the rest follow him like zealots. Because he doesn't pretend, Voss said. Quietly we pretended, that's why this is happening. They argued for hours. Paranoia reigned. Then someone said what? No one wanted to admit, we can't beat Earth. Silence until someone else whispered, then we erase it, on Earth. Beneath the obsidian platform, Vex stood. At the memorial monument alone. The night sky above wasn't natural, it was a dome projection of Sol's orbit, lit with every ship still loyal to Earth's banner, thousands silent ready. He stared at Aaron Holden's name engraved on the stone. You never saw it coming, did you? He muttered. You really thought reason would matter? Footsteps approached behind him. Familiar. Admiral Ryland, his former superior, the man who had signed off on Vex's exile. You're not here for peace, Vex said. Without turning, no, Ryland admitted. I'm here because I know what the Archani are about to do. Vex turned now. They've sanctioned the Reaper device. It's not a weapon, it's a deletion tool, converts biomass into raw energy using phase collapse. They've kept it hidden for generations, forbidden even among their own. Vex didn't flinch. Where? Deep in their sun vault. You'll never get close. Vex smiled just slightly. I don't need to, I just need them to try. The Archani Reaper device was moved from its vault under high secrecy. Only 10 of their most trusted commanders knew the exact route. Protected by void escorts, encrypted. Trans jumps didn't matter because Echo was already inside their network. Watching, listening. As the Reaper exited slip space, prepositioned human strike team, embedded as technicians in the transport. Security detail detonated their own bodies, each implanted with a neutron fragmentation core. The blast didn't destroy the ship, but it cracked open the containment chamber just long enough for the entire thing to be sucked into a dark well trap hidden inside the fabric of space, a human-engineered singularity. Mine impossible to detect. Vex watched the feeds live. The Reaper gone, said Ruth. Vex turned away. Let them know their god is dead. But the Archani weren't out of cards. They had one more weapon, and it bled. His name was Kieran Halden, younger brother of Aaron, a former soldier, dishonorably discharged from Earth's planetary defense units after a court martial no one ever talked about. He'd vanished after Aaron's execution. No trace, no comms, no memorial attendance. Now he was found on Rift Point Station, a crumbling trade hub orbiting the ruins of a council-disputed moon, drunk, bloodied and sitting in a cave. Surrounded by mercs, the Archani got to him first. They promised him a ship, revenge, a clean slate. All they wanted was one thing, Vex's location. He laughed in their faces the first time. The second time, they showed him a video. Aaron's execution from a different angle, the one the council never made public. It showed Aaron looking up at someone in the crowd. He mouthed something. Kieran, don't. That broke him. He didn't give them Vex's location, but he didn't refuse again either. Back aboard Revenant, Vex was deep inside war planning when the alert came in. Infiltration, Ruthin asked. Worse, Vex replied. Betrayal. Ekor played the intercept footage. Kieran alive, tied into a comms relay. The Archani had broadcast a signal ping into Earth's outer fleet, then cut it immediately. Only someone with Vex's biometrics could access that layer, and the Archani had somehow mimicked it. We have a leak in the bloodline, Ruthin growled. Vex's Jaw tightened. Find him alive, I don't want his death, I want his reasons. Vex authorized a shadow op, 3 black dagger units deployed into neutral space to retrieve Kieran Halden by any means necessary. No comms, no trail. Meanwhile, Vex made a different move. He broadcasted a new message across the galaxy, not through hidden channels, not as a threat, as a funeral rite. It was a video of Aaron, unseen, personal, recovered log from his final transmission, decrypted from his Envoy vessel by Echo Core. Aaron sitting alone, speaking directly into the void. They will never fear our weapons, but maybe someday they'll fear our memory, and maybe that's enough. It was short, quiet, raw. The feed ended with Aaron smiling. Tired kind of smile, the kind that knows the world won't change but speaks. Anyway, the galaxy felt that end. Millions began to ask a new question. What if Earth isn't the enemy? What if they're the warning? The Council fractured. The Drakwell formally withdrew from the Alliance, citing ethical discrepancies. The Corin opened their borders to Earth. Diplomats, the first species to do so. Smaller species, once loyal to the Council, refused to send troops. Archani called it treason, but no one listened because Earth had broken the spell and Vex wasn't finished. Set a course for the Ardent Line, he told the nav officer. Ruth looked up. That's Council territory, sacred ground. They made it sacred when they buried our dead there. What's the objective? Vex stared out the glass, voice cold. We dig them up. The Ardent Line was a place no one spoke of, not in council chambers, not in military briefings, not even in the deep space hymns the Trenerai sang when stars died. It was a graveyard, a forbidden slice of space, strung between dying suns, warped moons, and relic debris too old for even the Drakwell archives. Coordinates weren't shared, navigation maps blurted out, but Earth remembered. Because the Ardent Line was where the Council buried their crimes. It was where they dumped bodies without records, where accidents disappeared, where Earth's early diplomatic teams, the first to venture out long before Aaron Halden, had vanished without names, without justice, and Vex knew. Because one of them had been his father. The Revenant crept toward the Ardent Line through the veil of collapsed star matter. No signals, no lights, only silence. This wasn't war anymore. This was a reckoning. Ruth stood beside Vex on the command deck, staring into the dense stretch of nothing ahead. There were no fleets, no stations, just floating wreckage and the faint hum of decaying satellites that hadn't pinged in centuries. I thought this place was myth, Ruthven muttered. It was meant to be, Vex replied, but myths don't shatter bones. Myths don't scream in black boxes. We found one floating near Mercury's orbit 5 years ago. Took us this long to decipher the logs, what was on it. Names, coordinates, and one final transmission. He pulled it up. A crackling voice came through the speakers, broken, distorted. But human. Council ship attacked. No rescue left to die. If anyone finds this, tell Earth what they did. Tell my son I didn't run, I stood the time. Stamp was 61 years old. Vex stared at the speaker's ID. Commander Kale Vex. His father. That was the day Harlan Vex stopped being a soldier and became something else. They breached the outer shell of the Ardent Line 8 hours later. The debris here didn't drift, it lingered, like it was held by something unseen. Ships hung in twisted contortions, some shredded to pieces, others frozen. Mid-break, Ruthen scanned the perimeter. This wasn't abandonment, it's like. Something tried to erase a battle. Memory. Vex nodded. The Council's doctrine doesn't just eliminate threats. It deletes evidence. He pointed to a cluster of husks ahead. Target those. Deep scan for human signatures. The crew launched sensor drones. Minutes passed. Then, sir, said the lead analyst, one of them has Earth tech. Ancient hull structure still intact. Put me on board, Vex said. The docking procedure was manual. No drones. No risk of triggering old fail-safes. Vex entered the derelict vessel alone, armed only with a sidearm and a flickering wrist torch. The corridors inside smelled of rot and rusted oxygen. Recyclers. Earth flags still clung to walls in shredded strips. Bullet casings littered the floor, blood trails long, dried painted desperate paths down maintenance shafts. But it wasn't the blood that shook him, it was the recordings, logs stored in cryo-black drives, messages from the original crew. Day 43, they stopped answering. We begged the Council for help, they said. We were in restricted space, that we weren't authorized, they left us to die. Day 71, someone out in suits never came back. Not shot, just gone. Day 92, if this reaches Earth, we know what they did. We know the Council ordered the ambush. Tell my daughter her father didn't die in war, he died betrayal. Vex copied every log. Then he found the wall, a makeshift memorial scratched into metal by fingernail and blade. List of names. Aaron Halden was at the top, and beneath it, we speak in silence. We wait in the dark. Vex stared at the wall for a long time. Then he whispered, now you speak. Through me. Back on the Revenant, the crew compiled the data. Ruthen watched it all with clenched fists. These logs, it's not just a graveyard. It's proof, evidence the Council ordered. Kills on diplomatic vessels, and not just human, said one analyst. We're picking up non-Earth frequencies. Some of these ships, they're Koran, Drakwil, even Tranari. The Council didn't just silence us, they've been covering up everything. The implications were nuclear. Should we broadcast it? Ruthen asked. Vex shook his head. No, not yet. Why not? Because the galaxy doesn't need another data dump. He looked at the memorial on his tablet. The names, the messages, they need a funeral, one the stars will never forget. Elsewhere on Rift Point Station, the retrieval team had found him, Kieran Halden, alive, bruised but not broken. He sat in the corner of a rusted-out brig, a bottle in one hand, a Council tracking chip sliced out of his neck in the other. I knew you'd come, he said when the Black Dagger unit arrived. Vex wants you alive, one of them said, raising their rifle. Then you'd better hurry. The Council put a kill price on me. The second I hesitated. Why'd you give them access? Kieran's eyes were bloodshot, tired, empty. They didn't have to beat me, just show me the footage. Aaron, he looked right at me like he knew, like he was warning me, even as he died. He tossed the chip on the ground. I don't deserve to go home. The Black Dagger leader stepped forward. You don't, but this isn't about you. You've got one last job, and it starts with answering for what you almost did. 3 days later, Vex stood on the outer deck of Earth's skyward tomb, a massive orbital platform designed not for battle but remembrance, built-in secret, lined with the recovered names from the Ardent Line. Every name was etched in black metal. The broadcast went live Across the galaxy, Vex appeared, not in armor, not with weapons, but in plain Earth fleet black. We were told to believe in unity, in progress, in diplomacy. And when we sent our best to prove it, they never came home. They were called criminals, traitors, subsidiants. But now their names return to the stars. To the council, you buried truth beneath silence, we dug it back up. We are not here to beg for justice. We are here to write your obituary. Behind him, the obelisk lit up, each name burning bright like a star reborn. Billions watched, and in dozens of systems, council flags came down, but not all of Earth watched with celebration. In the deep chambers beneath Mars' echo chamber, a secret gathering of Earth's own elite met in quiet panic. Vex is pushing us too far, said one. Council won't recover. What happens when there's nothing left to fight? He becomes the fight. Some feared his power, his control. Others feared what would happen after the last shot was fired, because men like Harlan Vex weren't made for peace. On the Revenant, Kieran stood before his brother. The reunion wasn't warm. You gave them our blood, Vex said, voice low, cold. They already had it, Kieran muttered. I just didn't stop them. Silence. I don't ask for forgiveness, he added. Good, Vex replied, because I'm not offering it. But he didn't have Kieran executed. Instead, he handed him a dossier. What's this? Kieran asked. A council project, one Aaron discovered before he died, code name Genesis Vortex, buried in Drael territory, deep black site. It's where they tested early subsentient control tech, mind control, worse, species compliance, weaponized obedience. Kieran flipped through the pages. Diagrams, names, Earth scientists listed as missing, council operatives masked, blurry images, and at the end a photo of Aaron Holden before his final mission, speaking with a figure whose face had been redacted. Kieran's hands trembled. You think this was connected? I don't think I know. Vex stepped closer. Now you get to clean up your mistake. The Genesis Vortex was never meant to be found, buried deep within the icy caverns of Karnak-Vel, a forgotten planet in the Drakwil shadow systems. It was cloaked in phase static and locked inside dimensional scramblers so advanced that even council mapping drones never recorded its existence. But the humans found it because Aaron Holden had found it first, and he had died trying to expose it. Kieran Holden adjusted the straps on his stealth suit as the drop pod sealed around him. Across from him sat two Black Dagger operatives, both silent, unreadable, their eyes cold and their blades magnetized to their thighs. You sure you're ready for this? One finally asked. No, Kieran said, but I'm done waiting to feel ready. His voice was worn but no longer broken. He wasn't here to redeem himself. He was here to finish what his brother had started. Back on the Revenant, Vex monitored the mission from the war bridge. Ruth stood nearby, scanning the live telemetry. Ground integrity is thin, gravity distortion across the entry shaft. This place wasn't just hidden. It was meant to stay buried. It won't be for long. Vex muttered, bring the charges online. If Kieran fails, we erase the site. Entire planet if we have to, and if he doesn't fail. Vex didn't answer. He didn't like what they might find. The pod touched down with a jarring tremor. The ice cracked underfoot as the hatch hissed open. Cold bit instantly at Kieran's face, but it wasn't natural. It was too dry, too quiet, too engineered. This place wasn't dead, it was waiting. They moved through the chasm in silence. No lights, no chatter, just soft thermal scans and pulse pings echoing off the cavern walls. And then an opening, the ice stopped. Metal began beneath their boots, steel. Grates shimmered with embedded glyphs. Alien in design, but blended with Terran code. "What the hell is this?" one of the soldiers whispered. Kieran stepped forward, running his glove across a wall etched with faint markings. He wiped the frost off one panel. Beneath it, an Earth GV insignia. Research Division, Omega Black. Integration Protocols, UNS-14 clearance. Only Earth was here, he muttered. No, the soldier corrected, they built it. Deeper inside they found the labs. Rows of cryochambers, monitors flashing. Corrupted data. Tables with half-fused restraints, each room had a story, and none of them ended. Well, Kieran opened a locker and found child-sized uniforms labeled with tags. Subject 7B, controlled responder. Partial resistance to auditory imprinting. Subject 14C, emotion loop feedback. Failed, subject terminated. He swallowed hard. This wasn't just obedience research, this was programming, rebuilding identity, and then they found the footage. Flickering data terminal still held one working archive, corrupted but not completely lost. Kieran patched in his portable decryptor and activated the recovery sequence. The screen came alive. Aaron Halden. His face tired, he looked around cautiously before leaning into the camera. If you're watching this, I failed. The Council doesn't just enforce compliance, they engineer it. Species-wide, starting with us, with Earth. They called it Genesis because they were trying to rewrite the beginning, make us forget who we were, and make sure the next generation never knew. I found the first generation of test subjects, children from the colonies. Some are still alive somewhere deep in the lower rings. They wanted to make Earth the model species, loyal, submissive, quiet. I leaked the footage, that's why they came for me. Aaron leaned closer, his eyes darkened. And if they find this archive, they'll erase it like they did the others, like they did our mother. Kieran's hand tightened around the edge of the screen. He didn't even realize he'd stopped breathing. So if you're hearing this, Kieran, I'm sorry I never told you what happened. To her, she wasn't lost in a breach. She was one of the first Genesis subjects. That's why I became a diplomat. I thought I could find a way in, expose it from the inside. I was wrong. Tell Vex, tell him Earth was never weak, it was just blinded. The screen cut out. Kieran stood frozen. Behind him, the soldiers lowered their weapons in silence because this changed everything. Back on the Revenant, the feed dropped. Signal dead. Ruth barked. EMP spike from the vortex core. Could be interference, could be a trap. Vex stood jaw clenched. Prep extraction. You're going in. He's alone. We left him there. You're the only thing keeping this fleet together. You die, then someone else steps up. Inside the Genesis vortex, Kieran moved deeper. The lab wasn't over, it went down. He followed a rusted spiral corridor lit with flickering ball lamps, some alien, some Earth designed. The deeper he went, the stranger the architecture became. The walls moved, not literally, but they pulsed like something beneath the structure was still alive, still learning. And then he heard it. A voice, soft, female, familiar. Kieran. He stopped dead, Who's there? He whispered. Don't leave us here. He turned the corner. There were more chambers, hundreds suspended in liquid stasis. Bodies floated, some human, some half-modified, others reduced to structures wired into feedback loops. And one of them had his mother's face. She opened her eyes. Barely, her voice came through an old speaker rigged to the stasis pod. They kept me awake. Kieran dropped to his knees, hand pressed against the glass. Tubes ran from her skull into the walls, into machines that hummed with purpose far beyond comprehension. She wasn't dead, but she wasn't alive either, just sustained. A living memory fed into the system, powering some part of it. They used me to design the loops. They said I had a pliable core. I didn't understand. They said Earth would never resist if love could be rewired. Kieran's hand shook. I'm going to get you out of here. You can't if you sever the link. All of them die. They're connected to me. I'm the core. Kieran looked up. There were over 70 others, children, adults, all suspended, all alive. If I pull you out, they die. If I leave you, they use me again. He backed away, crushed by choice. That's when the door behind him opened and Vex stepped inside. He took in the room in one long, silent breath. He saw her. He saw the others. He saw what the council had built. He didn't speak, just walked to the pod, placed one hand on the glass. I know, he said quietly. She told me you came, she whispered. He didn't cry, but his voice cracked. When he spoke again, she used to braid my hair, he told Kieran before she joined the Envoy program, said it kept me grounded. Kieran nodded. Neither man looked at each other, only at her. Kieran finally spoke. What do we do? Vex turned. This place was never a lab. It was a prototype. He pointed to the walls, pulsing with faint red. They weren't building mind control. They were building consensus, a way to force universal obedience, a civilization of silence. Kieran's jaw clenched, and Earth was versed. Vex nodded. They failed with us, Aaron made sure of that, but they're still trying. He pulled out a device, a dimensional scrambler rigged to an antimatter cascade, high-end illegal. Final. We end it now. Kieran stared at the pod. I'm not leaving her. Vex turned to him. You're not. You're staying. Kieran blinked. What? There's no time for evac. We pull the others, get them out, but you stay with her, keep her stable long enough for the jump crews to extract the survivors. Kieran stepped back. You're serious? You want to finish what your brother started? This is it. Kieran looked at the pod again. His mother's eyes fluttered. A faint smile touched her lips. He nodded. Then get the others out and make sure the galaxy knows this happened. Vex left him there when the final charge was set. He looked back one last time. Kieran gave him a nod. Vex nodded back, then turned and left as the Revenant shuttles pulled the last survivors out of the site. The vortex collapsed in on itself, swallowed by fire and frozen light. And somewhere in that explosion, the Council's greatest secret died. Screaming. Back aboard the Revenant, Vex walked into the war room in silence. Ruthven was waiting. Well, Ruthven asked. Vex held out the recovered footage. Aaron, the mother, the children, the truth. All of it, Vex said. Everything they tried to bury. What now? Vex didn't hesitate. We show the galaxy what obedience costs. The broadcast went live on the third hour of the Terran cycle. It began not with an anthem, nor with the flag of Earth, not even with Vex. It began with Aaron Holden's final message, recovered from the Genesis vortex, the galaxy, watched as the beloved Envoy, once accused of sabotage, once mocked, silenced and discarded, stared into the lens with bruised eyes and whispered, "They erased us because they were afraid of what we might remember." Then came the footage, the labs, the cryopods, the children, Aaron's mother, wired into the neural grid. Council's files recovered by Kieran. The list of those deemed pliable species from across the galaxy sat in stunned silence as the images unfolded. Genesis wasn't about protecting peace. The narration continued. It was about prescience obedience. The Council didn't want allies, they wanted servants. Earth was the first failed prototype. The final image, a close-up of Aaron's face, silent and strong, and then Vex appeared. He stood at the skyward tomb's memorial deck, wind cutting past his cloak. Behind him, the names of the fallen pulsed like constellations. "We have shown you the truth," he began, voice steady. "We have bled to earn what you were given by birth. We are not perfect, but we are still human, and today we do not ask for recognition. We ask you, what is your silence worth?" He turned his gaze to the camera, and for the first time, Vex looked tired. Not weak, but human. "To those who still serve the Council, we are not your enemy, but we will not bow. Join us or stand aside, because we will not stop until the last chain is shattered and every erased voice is heard." The message ended. No applause, no music, just a question hanging across the stars, and slowly across the galactic web, replies began to echo. The first to fall were the Trenerai trade fleets. Their ships refused to fire when sent to intercept Earth's expansion force near the Prochon Gate. Instead, half of them turned and joined the humans. The others drifted away, sending out a final message. We believed the Council stood for peace, but peace built on silence is still slavery. Then came the Corin break. The Corin Assembly, once Earth's fiercest rival, opened their docks. Earthfleet vessels were welcomed, resupplied, rearmed, and then came the march. Across 20 Council sectors, colonial uprisings began. On Zenthra 9, slaves used Council stun rods to beat their masters in the streets. On Morik's Edge, a planetary A designed for citizen monitoring turned itself off, declaring, "I will no longer assist tyranny." On Veridan, a civilian broadcast showed statues of the Speaker of Stars being pulled down by children whose parents had vanished under compliance sanctions. The galaxy wasn't healing, it was purging, and Earth, bloody, limping, scarred, stood at the center of it all. Inside the Revenant, Vex stood before a war room filled not just with humans, but allies. A Drakwil tactician, a defector from the Archani fleet, a Trenerai intel broker, even a Corin commander who had once fought Vex in the Titan Wars. They were not friends, not even comrades, but they were united by something deeper. Survival. They'll rally their final fleets, Vex said. They'll pull from the old sectors, from the vault systems, and when they do, they'll bring every weapon we were told didn't exist. "What's the target?" asked the Corin. Vex pointed to a massive star map. At its center, a dark system labeled Keltric 1. "The original Council core," Vex said. "Where it all began. It's more than a seat of power, it's where the Genesis code was written." "You're going to burn it?" someone asked. "No," Vex replied. "I'm going to expose it. Then we burn what's left, The Council, core known as Calrix 1, hadn't been seen in public records for nearly a century, hidden beneath redirected warp lanes and blackout buoys. It was a fortress built inside a binary system. Vast rings of orbital mines, defense grids, AI-controlled kill satellites. And deep within it, the Vault of Origin, a data bank so ancient only 5 species even knew it existed. Now Vex was coming for it, and the Council knew it. In the last emergency session of the High Assembly, the few remaining loyalists gathered under fire. Many chairs sat empty, others held corpses. The Arcani Chancellor, half burned from an assassination attempt, barked into the hollow chamber. Humanity was always a disease, now it spreads. A new delegate, young and terrified, spoke up. They didn't ask for war, they asked for truth. You don't win wars with truth, the Chancellor spat. Maybe not, the young one said, but you don't survive lies either. The battle began 6 days later. Earthfleet and allied defectors formed a spear formation, approaching Calrix 1 at low warp, enough to avoid triple arms, fast enough to reach the outer gate in under 4 hours. Vex stood aboard the Revenant, helmet off, staring through the main viewport. All ships, this is Vex. You are not here for glory. You are not here for banners. He paused. You are here for the ones who never made it home. Thousands of ships blinked back. Response. He looked to Ruth. Take us in. The first wave came from the Council's last clean fleets, the ones untouched by rebellion, still loyal, still polished, and bright with their false ideals. Vex tore through them like paper, using Ecor's collapse codes. Earthfleet disrupted their targeting systems, forced internal reactor loops, jammed their comms with recordings of Genesis experiments. Let them hear their shame as they die. Vex growled. In less than 40 minutes, half the Loyalist fleet was gone, and then the real fight began. The Vault Guardians emerged, colossal machines of preconcealed design, no crew, no heat signatures, just sentient war platforms, wired to defend the truth at all costs. Even Echo couldn't hack them. Earth had to fight the old way, ship by ship, hand by hand, man by man. Ruthven's vessel took a direct hit. He went down with it, sending a final voice clip to Vex. Don't stop, even if I burn. Make sure they never rewrite us again. Vex closed his eyes and kept moving. The Vault of Origin was buried beneath frozen core on Calrix 1's 5th moon. Vex landed with a shock team, Corin, allies flanking them, slicing through anti-atter drones and auto turrets. By the time they reached the main gate, 30% of Earth's fleet was gone, but Vex didn't care. He was already inside. Vault's core room pulsed with living data, organic servers, memories stored not in silicon but in consciousness loops. He activated the central console. A voice spoke. Identify Harlan. Vex, you are unauthorized. You are subsentient. He drew his pistol, fired twice into the console. It sparked, bled static, and unlocked. Inside files, logs, memories. One in particular stood out. Genesis compliance, initial test candidate. EarthGov diplomatic liaison, name Aaron. Halden. Vex's breath caught. Aaron had been targeted from the beginning. They never trusted him. They never planned to, and his execution, it wasn't punishment, it was completion. Vex uploaded every file to Ecor. Earthfleet began the final broadcast. The vault, the voices, the test logs, the directives. Billions watched across The galaxy as the truth was no longer. Whisper, and then Vex ordered the detonation. Calrix 1 burned, the vault imploded. The last lie died. When it was over, Vex stood alone on the bridge of the Revenant. His fleet was scattered. Ruthin was gone, Kieran was gone, but Earth was free, and the stars, they finally listened. The council was dead. Not with ceremony, not with a treaty. Just gone. The archives were broadcast. The fleets fell silent. The vault of Origin reduced to slag in the orbit of a broken moon. What few loyalist ships remained fled into deep space. Leaderless, hunted, whispered about like relics of an empire no one wanted to remember. Across the galaxy, flags came down. Statues fell, and for the first time in centuries, the stars were quiet. But Earth didn't celebrate because they people who could have celebrated didn't survive. Harlan stood alone on a black sand cliff overlooking the Pacific. No guards, no admirals, no command codes to input, just the wind and the sound of waves crashing below like distant artillery. He hadn't returned to Earth for ceremony. He returned to bury the last war he'd ever fight. A shuttle landed behind him. Footsteps approached. It was Kieran, alive, scarred, changed. He walked slowly, like every step cost him something. Vex didn't turn. You survived, he said quietly. Barely, Kieran replied. Extraction team pulled me out with 11 kids and what was left of her. Vex looked over his shoulder. Your mother? Curran nodded. She's gone. Brain activity failed during the jump, but her last thoughts were stable. She knew. Silence. She knew we came for her. They stood like that for a while. Brothers, not by blood but by the same wound that never quite closed. Ruth's grave is out past the ridge, Vex said eventually. Didn't want him buried on the skyward. He hated heights. Kieran smirked faintly. You ever think about what happens now? He asked. Vex didn't answer immediately. Then, I'm not sure I know how to exist without something to burn. Across the galaxy, a new order was forming, but it wasn't Earth leading it. Vex had refused the throne. They'd offered it. Hell, they begged a new high commander, a global unifier, the man who ended the tyranny of 1,000 years. He said no because the war was never about control. It was about taking the leash off. Instead, Earth formed a council of its own, elected, decentralized, monitored by AI systems, embedded with public access rights. No secrets, no black projects. Every file from the Vault of Origin was made public. The new galaxy wasn't perfect, but it wasn't silent, and that made all the difference. The statues came later, one on Earth, one on Mars, one on Corin soil. Aaron Halden, arms folded, not as a martyr, but as a man who stood up when standing cost everything. Underneath it, a quote from his final log. We speak in silence, we wait in the dark, until someone remembers. As for Vex, he disappeared. Some said he retired to Europa's black coast. Others said he took a small crew and vanished into deep space, hunting what was left of the Genesis machine code, ensuring it never rose again. But most believe the truth is simpler. He did what soldiers do when the war ends. He faded because the galaxy didn't need him anymore. 1 year later, Kieran returned to Carnickfell. The ruins of the Genesis vortex were still there, melted steel, glass blown out, scorch marks etched into the mountains like veins. He walked the path to where his mother's chamber once stood. There was nothing left but cold rock. But he knelt anyway, left behind a single locket Aaron's recovered from his Envoy gear before the execution. Inside was a photo, Aaron, Kieran, and their mother all smiling before any of this happened, before betrayal, before silence, before the fire. Kieran returned to Earth and joined the Restoration Corps. He didn't wear medals, didn't use the Halden name. He just worked recovering victims, rebuilding colonies, teaching children what it meant to ask questions no one else would answer. And every now and then a transmission would reach him. No signal origin, no call sign, just a simple phrase, still burning, and he'd smile because he knew Vex was out there, still watching, still guarding the edge, still making sure the lie never came back. Galactic Year 1 Post-Council Era. They renamed the day of Aaron Holden's execution. It was no longer a date of mourning, it was called the Day of Voice, and every year across the systems, people stopped for 60 seconds of silence, not out of sadness but out of remembrance, because Aaron didn't die in silence. He was the silence, and now the galaxy had learned to speak. Again. Epilogue. On a distant outpost at the edge of charted space, a young girl stares out a viewport. Behind her, a display flashes images from the war. Was it true, she asks, what they say about Earth, that they were weak, that they lost control? The old woman beside her, skin lined with stardust, voice deep with memory, smiles gently. No, she says, they didn't lose control. They took it back.